Hello and welcome to the University of Rhode Island's very first sports talk show, Dropping the Anchor. I'm your host, Adam Bernstein. Today I'm joined by analysts Noel McLean, Cam Ellenwood, and Katie Siegel. We're going to jump right into some sports going around at URI. Nothing better to start with than men's basketball press conference as of today's recording of head coach Archie Miller. I think we should go around and talk about our initial reactions to the hire.
Yeah, I love the hire from obviously great experience in the A-10, brought his team to the Elite Eight, even beat a high-powered Syracuse offense and defense, and then not as much success at Indiana, but still a winning record over there. I love the hire.
I do too. I thought the press conference was awesome because Archie seems like a really great coach, somebody that could really fit in well in Rhodey. And I think even he said it himself, this is the most ready he's been in his whole life, and I think that's something that Rhodey could really use right now.
I think it's also a massive commitment by President Parlange and Thorbjorn because it's been a little bit hard without Danny Hurley for a little bit, and now that getting someone with a big name like Archie Miller really sets the tone for the next few years of this program.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting to see how he recruits with several players entering the transfer portal with the option to return next season. The only players to remain so far at the University of Rhode Island as of this recording, Sebastian Thomas, Makai, Mikal Mitchell, Jalen Carey, and Abdu Sam. So we'll see how he can utilize the transfer portal and any other recruitment connections that he currently has.
Yeah, when you look at Archie Miller, one thing that comes to mind, one word, is recruitment. He's such a good recruit. He's recruited heavily over the years at Dayton and at Indiana. I love the fact that Trez Berry was in the front row today. That's a positive aspect to see that he might be coming back. Great to see some of the other folks. Obviously, Jalen Carey was there, and just a big crowd there, and good to see both men's and women's and a lot of support from the community building around that team.
To your point, I really do think that the new players that do come in with Archie Miller, who will eventually come, they'll fit in really well with Rhodey's offense. One of the things Miller said during the press conference was that he wants a fast, free-flowing, and unselfish offense, and I think Cox did a good job of setting that up while he was here, and I think it's just something that Miller will take and run with.
Also, Malik Martin was there too today, so that's a big, if he can stay, that's a big get. And also, I'd watch out for Chance Stevens. He decommitted this past week when David Cox left. Not sure how that's going to work with him coming back, if it's even possible, but that's something to look at because he's the only recruit that committed to the University of Rhode Island before David Cox. So,
yeah, Chance Stevens, certainly a huge asset that Rhode Island will be missing out on if they cannot get him. A big three-point presence over in Riverside, California for the Poly team out there on the West Coast. He actually has a video up on YouTube of him hitting 65 consecutive three-pointers. I actually had the opportunity to talk to him about that. So with Rhode Island lacking the shooting presence, especially from range, they would definitely be getting a great recruit out of Chance Stevens, also nicknamed the Sniper. So it'll be interesting to see if he can come to the Ryan Center next season. But sticking on Archie Miller, again, he returns to the Atlantic 10 Conference. To your point, he's the most ready, and we'll see if he is the most ready next season. But moving on to women's basketball, staying on basketball, a tough NIT loss for the Rhode Island Rams, but a remarkable season. What are you guys' initial reactions to the season?
I think it was a really good season, record-breaking season, and they broke the record for wins with 25. I think there's nothing to be ashamed of to lose in WNIT. Even though it was a home game, it's just tough to lose at home, and the A-10 tournament wasn't really what you wanted to have. It's still a great pillar for the program, and Tammy Reese will be staying, as we heard earlier this week. And I think it's great to see that there's going to be a commitment and loyalty to the program, that they can start building this as the first building block, and they can go on to the future and really build something here.
Definitely, and along with record-breaking, it was heartbreaking. I was so
Yes.
sad.
Yeah.
I mean, they had such a run going. Tammy Reese had such good energy in the team. Everyone had such good attitude about everything. It was, I believe, it was the first NIT appearance ever. So that's incredibly big, and I think this team could have gone really far. It was a really close, 11 lead changes I saw. Ridiculous, really close, heartbreaking.
Yeah, I had a chance to call that game. It was a really good game. The thing with Rhode Island in that game was they just could not make shots. There was a lid on the rim all night for the Rams. Fapasi, all of them, just nobody could hit shots that they were. They brought in even some players off the bench. Vargas had a good night off the bench. I'm glad she got to finish off her career at the Ryan Center on a high note. But obviously, on a positive note, Tammy Reese turned down her hometown, so to say. turned down Virginia, and she had a very emotional press conference, as many people have seen on Twitter and whatnot. I'm excited that she's going to be back, but when you have a coach of 27 years of experience in Quinnipiac and multiple WNIT tournament trips, it's just a hard thing to do and go in and win. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the passion that Tammy Reese presents on the sideline. And to allude to that quote that you just brought up, she said, "For me, it's the quality and the fit where you are in your life.
Yep.
What's important, also who really wants you and who fights for you more." And to add on to that, athletic director Thor Bjorn said, "There's no one that fights harder for me than that," or she said, "There's no one that fights harder than me than that man right there from day one and continued every day." He was a big advocate to bring her into the University of Rhode Island and to boost the morale of that program here on campus. But moving on to baseball and softball, a rough start to both the programs. Baseball so far opening up with a 2-15 start with losses to Auburn, Tennessee, South Alabama, William and Mary, and most recently the Ocean State rivalry to Bryant.
Yeah, it really sucks to lose to Bryant. Sacred Heart was a good one though, a walk-off grand slam that was in ESPN, I think you brought it up earlier. It was his first home run of the season by Jack Cucinato, who was a grad transfer from LaSalle, as a center fielder. But from the beginning of the season, it was they were third in the A10 to start the preseason rankings, but playing William and Mary, Tennessee, Auburn, and South Alabama all the way is a really tough start to the season. So they still have a lot of time to turn around. The A10 hasn't even started yet. So it's still looking good for them.
Yeah, it's hard when you talk about New England baseball. It's hard to get out. I know a lot of their work was done in the baseball barn. There's literally a barn where they're practicing. Obviously, they're not out on the field. They're not like a team in Tennessee that's out on the field every single day. Obviously, they're still getting repetition in, but you go down and have these well-oiled, well-played on the actual field teams, it's very difficult to win ball games.
I had the pleasure of going down to Bulldock Field this weekend to watch one of the games versus Bryant, and it really did look like, even though the team has been struggling against those Southern teams, I really do think that there is some pop there that we could see once they get into maybe more mid-season form, kind of get it deeper in the year. Like you said, face some conference teams. I think they have a really good shot of kind of being well in the conference and doing well overall. And
an experienced head coach in Rafael Serrato as well, so we can see what he does going forward. What can you guys tell me about the softball team as of this far?
So the expectations were low. It's Coach Whitney Goldstein's first year. She's just going to try to put her identity in the program. So a slow start isn't really the worst thing in the world for them. They still are a couple of years out from being really competitive in the league. That's pretty much my thought on it.
Yeah, I would say a rebuilding year is the way that I would put it, but obviously if you're on the team, you don't want to think of it like that. Obviously you have to go into every practice, every game wanting to win and having the mindset of winning games. Like you said, a first-year head coach, some good talent on that team. I think in years to come, they could be very good. I also love the fact that new this year, some of our students here just got the first ESPN Plus broadcast for softball. I'm sure that's a morale booster. Get some coverage for those ladies, and it should be good.
Yeah, and in conference, they've had 1 win and 4 losses. And 2 of those losses have been against UMass at a doubleheader. So it's like, even though they got 4 losses, 2 of them are against the same team. I think there's really good things we could see coming down the road.
Yeah, I think Coach Goldstein definitely brings that Northeast presence in terms of recruiting. She is the granddaughter of former Yankees and Boston Red Sox manager Don Zimmer as well. But to touch our final point of the URI Sports Recap, the URI Club Lacrosse team off to a really great start so far. What do you guys have for me on there?
So they're off to a 5-0 start this season. They're ranked 4th in the Division II coaches poll rankings. They scored 96 goals in round 22, so they've dominated almost every game they've been in. Our own Charlie White, who is one of the presidents in the club, is 3rd on the team with 12 goals and also 7 assists in the season.
And just a lot of goals scored in this lacrosse team. We saw some of the highlights from the past few games. UMass Dartmouth, I think it was, brought their club out, and they've just been handling business, just rips on cage. It's been beautiful all around.
It's been great, too, to see the return of just club sports in general at URI, because I think a lot of our teams, even club and Division I, have had to take a back seat due to the pandemic. So to see them come back and have so much success has been great.
It's a long season, so we'll see how their success continues thus far. And that will do it for URI Sports Recap around campus, but we'll move over to professional sports. A lot going on right now between baseball, NFL, free agency, and March Madness. We'll start with baseball, Major League Baseball, something that we did not expect to have this season, but now with free agency and spring training going on in a busy month of March. Lots to talk about. Dodgers signing Freddie Freeman. What are your guys' initial reactions to that?
Yeah, I love, it's a love-hate relationship, obviously. The video recently surfaced of a fan yelling out, not an approval, let's just say that, of the Freeman signing with the Dodgers, putting on that jersey for the first time. Obviously, he was real good with the Braves. I have a couple of Atlanta Braves friends that are more vocal about it than I am, but certainly he will be another dangerous aspect to that Dodgers team.
Yeah, to me, it was unbelievable for many reasons. One being that I couldn't believe Freeman was leading the Braves, and two being that he went, guess where? To LA. As if they need another big bat in that lineup that has Mookie Betts, Trey Turner, a bunch of other big names that they're just Freeman's going to be a huge addition for them.
And not only do they add Freeman on the hitting side, they also still have Clayton Kershaw and Dustin May and Walker Buehler, so they're far and away the favorites in the NL, probably the favorite to win the World Series. So I don't know how many more people they can fit in the lineup in rotation, but I'm assuming there'll be more coming.
Yeah, and I think the most surprising part of that entire thing was just the Atlanta front office moving on from Freddie Freeman after him just being a crucial part of that World Series victory last fall, and then making the acquisition of Matt Olson, a player that I think the Yankees were definitely hunting down for a long time. But moving over to a rival of the Yankees, the Red Sox, making a big splash with Trevor Story.
Yeah, the Red Sox recently signing Trevor Story. I love that. That's a huge move on the Red Sox side. The shortstop, he's just signed the 6-year, $140 million contract sign. And last year he hit .251, but obviously his defense is also just fantastic. He's so good on the field. He'll knock down anything that comes his way. And I just love him on the defensive and on the offensive power side.
I think a move with going to Fenway is going to be really good for him because he has a lot of balls to left field. Green Monster's going to really come into play for him. And it's the first big move for Chaim Bloom as general manager of the Red Sox, and it's also the first big move for the Red Sox in 2015 when they brought in David Price. And the middle infield now with Sander Bogarts and Trevor Story is going to be one of the best in the league, if not the best in the league.
Definitely, and as a Sox fan, I was waiting for them to make a big move this year. I mean, not only do we have to wait for baseball, we have to wait for them to figure out what they're doing too. It just seems like they keep us waiting. But I think Story is going to be a huge addition to the Sox lineup, and I think that in the absence of Schwarber that they lost, I think he's going to fill in pretty great.
Finally, a player that I feel like every team was in on, Carlos Correa. You love him, you hate him because of what he did with the Houston Astros, but the Twins making a big move, signing him after moving on from Josh Donaldson and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa.
Yeah, I mean, whether you love or you hate him, one thing that you can't argue with is that he's a good ball player. And, not a huge fan of what went down in Houston, but reality is we're moving on and he's playing with the Twins. And if you're a Twins fan or a Twins player, you got to be thinking, well, now we've got a powerhouse in our lineup, and I think he's going to be a very good aspect to that roster.
The Twins had a bad year last year. It's not sugarcoating it, but I think this is an aggressive move by the Twins. They're trying to rebuild really quickly. I thought it was interesting that it's a 3-year deal. He's an opt-out extra every year. So if it doesn't go well this year, he may just pack up and leave. I would have thought the Yankees, Astros, or Tigers would have spent out. He would have gone there instead because they're a bigger market, and Minnesota's not really what you think of for baseball. But either way, I'm interested to see how it'll work out.
I also thought that he was going to go somewhere else. I really didn't think that he'd go into Minnesota. I thought he'd be chasing the bigger bag for sure. But I mean, I think it'll be a difference for Correa to switch to this new role, join a new lineup, being somewhere he's never played before. I mean, playing on the Astros his whole career, I think this will be a big switch.
Yeah, absolutely. Sticking with baseball, and finally, New York, both the Mets and the Yankees having big off seasons. Most specifically, the Mets signing Max Scherzer before the lockout. Definitely a player who wasn't in his prime prior to the signing, but definitely adds to the New York Mets starting rotation.
Yeah, I mean, that's just another guy. The Mets in years past obviously haven't been as big, but they're starting to find their rhythm. You can see those New York baseball fans over on the Mets side of things start to gain a little hope. I love the Scherzer sign, and it'll be interesting to see what he can do.
Hopefully it gets them finally to the top because it's been a lot of years they've fallen short and they shouldn't have, but hopefully Scherzer will help them out.
I was thinking the same thing. It seems like the Mets, anything they do, the poor team is still going to struggle. Hopefully this will be what does it for them. I'm really rooting for them.
Yeah, they haven't had that success since 2015. But moving over to the Bronx, quietly making moves, as we alluded to before, trading for Josh Donaldson, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, and Ben Rotenberg. Also making a couple other moves, shipping off Luke Boyd to San Diego. Seems like they've been active, but many fans didn't really know when they would start with the trades, and they really haven't signed that many free agents.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Adam. And one thing to add to that about the Yankees, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that Aaron Judge will not play in any home games unless the regulations are changed in the Bronx. We saw the same thing with Kyrie Irving and the NBA side of things, not playing in Brooklyn because of COVID protocols, refusing to get vaccinated. I know a buddy of mine who just got drafted to the Pittsburgh Pirates, sees him in the gym every day. He's out doing his regular thing, but he will not be playing as of right now at home, which is a huge loss to that Yankees lineup. Obviously, you have some other heavy hitters in there, but Aaron Judge not in the lineup at home for the Yankees, that's a big question mark.
Yeah, I think he will play. I'm not entirely sure what the regulations are for the city of New York, but I do know that for Toronto and for Canada, when they come and visit the Blue Jays, I don't believe he will be able to play in any of those series being unvaccinated. So it'll be interesting to see how they match up against arguably now one of the better teams in the AL East with the acquisition of Matt Chapman from Oakland.
Speaking of big players in the Yankee lineup, one of the things I wanted to touch on was Gio Urshela's loss, because I think the Yankees are really going to be hurting without him in the lineup. I thought he really rounded out their lineup really well, regardless of all the players that were in it. So it'll be interesting to see how the new players, Josh Donaldson, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, how they'll fit in.
I think it's interesting that they got rid of Gary Sanchez and Luke Voigt. I think Luke Voigt was really important to them for a little while as first baseman. Gary Sanchez, wasn't really a great catcher, but he could hit. And I think it'll be interesting if Judge can't play in New York, if Giancarlo Stanton can stay healthy and produce for that every home game when Judge is out.
Yeah, it seems like they're moving more towards the contact hitting and less from the power. But that will do it for baseball. We'll jump into the NFL free agency. A big quarterback carousel going around right now. We'll start with probably the biggest one, Desean Watson going to the Browns, and also we'll start with Russell Wilson going to the Broncos, an AFC West showdown with all of those quarterbacks in that conference.
I'm frankly disgusted by the Desean Watson deal. I thought somebody who's dealing with as many domestic abuse allegations as he is, getting a contract as big as he did, it really makes me wonder what's going on with the NFL and what's going on with what they're doing.
I think football-wise, it's a great win for Cleveland, but really bad for PR, especially with the statements they came out this week with Haslam saying like they did their due diligence, but they really didn't. I think no one should ever get traded if they have 22 sexual assault cases pending, even if the grand jury said they should have gotten off with it. But if we're looking at the football perspective, it's a really good pickup for them. They need something like that. Baker Mayfield obviously wasn't working out. So 3 first-round picks is a lot, but if he's not suspended for the rest of his life, maybe it'll work out for him.
Yeah, I mean, basically exactly what you guys just said. From a football standpoint, it's a fantastic move. Obviously, on the field, he's a good quarterback. I like how he runs the ball. Obviously, he's a good quarterback. He's strong, but I cannot agree more with, on the other side of things, on the more important side of things, it's unfortunate to see that once again situation was mishandled, and we'll see what comes of it.
And I think everyone is wondering now where Browns quarterback Baker Mayfield will go. What are your guys' predictions on that?
I thought Indianapolis, but obviously with the move today with Matt Ryan, so maybe Seattle. That's the only other place I could think of. Maybe Atlanta. No, Atlanta just had Marcus Mariota, so probably Seattle if I had to guess.
Big shoes to fill.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I thought he was going to go over to the Indianapolis Colts, but also the Carolina Panthers could be one. Obviously, with Russell Wilson leaving the Seattle Seahawks, we could see him headed over there. There's a couple spots, but Baker Mayfield is obviously a guy. He wants to be involved. You can see he has a lot of passion for the game. But we saw him with the Browns just really not as efficient as he wants to be, and as obviously the Browns organization with this wanting to get rid of him and the recent signing, he's not being as efficient as he needs to win games in the NFL.
I do think that wherever he does end up, it will be an opportunity to grow for him. Because at the end of the day, he's still a young player. I mean, he's been in the league a number of years now, but he's only been with the Browns in an area where he hasn't really succeeded. So I think wherever he ends up could be a spot where he could really make something for himself.
Yeah, former Heisman winner as well. He did have some success in college. But sticking on Russell Wilson and the Broncos. He was traded to the Broncos in exchange for Drew Lock. What are your reactions to that trade?
I mean, if I were a Seattle fan, I'd be very upset. I don't know really how else to say it. I think some people in the friends of mine would have stronger words, but I think it was an interesting move. Obviously, Wilson is getting a little older. I know recently, I think he came out with a statement saying he wants to play 10 to 15 more years in the NFL. And I mean, considering we just saw Tom Brady come back at his age and what he's done, maybe that's possible, but 10 to 15 more years in the recent signing, I think that shows that he's excited to be moving, and I think that he's excited to be productive wherever he's at.
I think it's a move Denver had to make because of everyone else improving in the AFC West. Even with the Chiefs already there, the Chargers have Herbert and the Raiders have Derek Carr, who's okay, but he's not. I mean, but there's a lot of moves that are moving around in the AFC West right now. They need something like this to get themselves to the top. They already have a young core with Javonte Williams, Jerry Jeudy, and Cortland Sutton, but they needed that quarterback because they had inconsistent play last year with Teddy Bridgewater. So they really needed something to kickstart their offense.
I think you said it perfectly. I really think that they were looking for something to do, and maybe this is what it's going to take for the Broncos to actually be a force in the AFC West.
Several other quarterbacks on the move this offseason. Marcus Mariota to the Falcons, Matt Ryan to the Colts, Carson Wentz to the Commanders, Mitch Trubisky to the Steelers. Cam, what are your reactions to Marcus Mariota to the Falcons?
I think it's really weird to go from Matt Ryan to Marcus Mariota, two completely different quarterbacks. I know Mariota worked with our head coach Arthur Smith in Tennessee for a little while, but it's just a really weird fit. There's nothing really there. Mariota hasn't started in a while, so I think it's just going to be interesting. It looks like they're in complete rebuild mode, so I don't think it's going to be a long-term solution for Mariota.
It'll be interesting to see what the Colts do with Matt Ryan, who comes over from Atlanta. Noah, what's your reaction to that?
Yeah, obviously, I know I thought and other people thought that Baker Mayfield was going to end up in Indianapolis, but obviously, as we saw today, the Falcons sent quarterback Matt Ryan to the Colts. I think they could really do good things with him. Obviously, 36 years old. He's an older guy, but for his age, I think he still moves fairly well. I think he's still got a few more years. Obviously, if they're paying him big money like they are, then they think so too. But I think Matt Ryan could do really good things over there.
Yeah, at the start of his career, he played on some pretty good teams, throwing to Julio Jones, most recently Calvin Ridley. He's had some pretty good targets as well, Kyle Pitts as well. But the Colts now moving on from Carson Wentz, heading to Washington. Katie.
Yeah, my family's Philly fans, so I have a love-hate relationship with Carson. I'm just like waiting for him to find his footing. I think he almost had it in Indianapolis, but there was something missing there, and I think maybe he could find it on the Commanders, the newly named Commanders, to note. And I think with the NL East being all over the place all the time, I think really anything can happen.
Yeah. And finally, Mitch Trubisky heading to Pittsburgh after long-term quarterback Ben Roethlisberger retires. Mitch Trubisky, a long backup, the Chicago Bears, did not find success that he had hoped for in the NFL, so we'll see what Mike Tomlin can do with the young quarterback in Pittsburgh. Finally, moving on to just the NBA briefly and the NHL playoffs coming up next month. I'm curious what your guys' predictions are, who you think will win. We'll start with the NBA.
I think Boston's really hot right now. I don't know how, but Tatum and Brown are playing great. Marcus Smart's doing his thing. I don't understand how it's working, but they've won a ton of games in a row. They look really good. I don't know. They're definitely a team to watch going down the stretch. And then Minnesota in the West has been really hot for no reason as well. So definitely two teams to look out for going into the playoffs.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I can't agree more. As a Boston fan, Boston's doing their thing. I love the Bucks. Obviously, the Lakers really struggling. Just Russell Westbrook, as I like to call him, just really not doing his thing. I think he's getting paid too much money for the season that he's having. It'll be interesting to see now with Ben Simmons and James Harden teamed up. That'll be very interesting to see in the last few months of the season. But also the Chicago Bulls and the Hornets, I love those two teams coming out into the playoffs side of things. I think they could be very dangerous. Obviously, LaMelo Ball thought it was going to be a crazy thing, but now we've seen he is actually the real deal, and he can make a team really, really good.
I think any of the teams that you just named could totally do it. I think the Boston too, as much as I would like them to, I really hope they can get it down the line. But I think I might go Bucks here. I think Giannis and Chris Middleton are a duo that's just going to plow their way through everybody, and I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, I'm also in agreement with you about the Chicago Bulls. I've been hot on them all season since the moves that they made in the past offseason, bringing in Caruso, DeRozan. I mean, they're just playing, with passion. They're really just electric every single night, and they had that long winning streak earlier in the season. So it'll be interesting to see if Chicago can come back as a contender. We really haven't seen them as a contender really into the month of March and April since Michael Jordan and those years with the Bulls. But moving over to the NHL briefly, your predictions on who will win the Stanley Cup.
I hate to be that guy again, but I gotta start over with Boston. They've been super hot. I think they're fourth in their conference right now. I know they've been moving the puck really well. You watch this season go on, they've just been finding each other so well, just winning 9 or 10 game win streaks as of recent, just finding the back of the net, and the defense has been stellar. A lot of hard hits, a lot of clean hard hits, something that we've seen for the most part. They've been able to stay healthy, and I think that if they are able to stay healthy as we go into the final months and into the postseason, the Bruins are my pick to win the Stanley playoffs.
I think moving Jake for the Bruins, I think moving Jake DeBrusk up to the first line has really gotten him going, and then Swayman's gotten a lot better. Adding Hampus Lindholm as well is a really good addition to defense. I think it's having Pops in the second line. They've made a lot of good moves. They haven't done some characteristic of Bruce Cassidy to do it, but I also think that Florida's a really good shot to win it this year. Adding Claude Giroux this past couple of days, I think that's going to put them way ahead of the rest of the league. I'm impressed with the team from Florida, besides Tampa's doing so well, because Florida's had terrible attendance over the past years. But they've looked really good this year, and I think they can win it.
I'm going Boston. I gotta go Boston here. I think the changes that they've made and the momentum that they've gained the last couple games, and I think it can really carry them. I'm going Boston all the way.
I like the Bruins prediction. I also like the Florida Panthers adding a older player like Claude Giroux, really adding to the forward line in the first and second line. But I think another team to really look out for is Colorado. They've been hot all season. Just to keep tabs on them, more of a younger team compared to Boston or compared to any of the other teams that we just listed like Florida, but Colorado can definitely make some noise, and they really haven't had a championship-like season in years, so it'll be interesting to see what's to come. Just briefly moving over to UFC, UFC London could have stood alone as a numbered UFC event. President Dana White claimed that they grossed $4.5 million at the gate and broke attendance records at the O2 Arena. Paddy Pimblett lived up to the high expectations that night and submitted the opponent in the first round of the fight. Certainly a lot going on in UFC, and we will see what happens going forward. Moving on to what probably everyone is looking forward to in the month of March, and that's March Madness. Lots of upsets to come as we start the Sweet 16 round this week. I think the team to start with is St. Peter's, probably a team that nobody expected would be here.
Yeah, nobody, as you just said, Adam, nobody expected this. There's always one or two teams that normally they win one game. We saw UMBC a few years ago beat Virginia after beating UVM, which was also uncalled for in that conference championship, the buzzer beater to beat UVM and then to go on and beat the #1 seed. But now we see St. Peter's just really playing well. One thing is, after the round of 64, there was only one bracket that had there was nobody got it all 64, but got 63 out of 64 correct. However, his one game that he got wrong was Kentucky, and his champion was Kentucky. So the bracket was fantastic, but the one game really just messed that kid's bracket up. That's one game, all it takes.
I think the St. Peter's run is almost more impressive than UMBC, just because St. Peter's is literally a street in Jersey City. It's way smaller than any other school. They only put $1.6 million into their basketball program, and Coach Calipari makes $8 million a year. So the difference between the two is insane to think about. And I hope they can make it to the league. Probably not, unfortunately. But they represent the New York, New Jersey area very well the way they play. They play defensively hard, never give up. That really represents the area of New York, New Jersey really well.
I thought I was mad when my bracket got busted. If I was that guy, I would be really angry. But with St. Peter's, I just don't even think that this is a fluke win for them. I think that they could really go somewhere. I mean, they beat number 2 seed Kentucky, they beat number 7 Murray State, they got number 3 Purdue. I mean, they beat better teams, so anything can happen.
Absolutely, and I think certainly someone to credit for their success is head coach Shaheen Holloway. Is he on the move to Seton Hall, a former guard at Seton Hall, and they just moved on from their head coach, Kevin Willard, who is now going to Maryland. So it'll be interesting to see if Holloway gets some looks following their departure of the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be very interesting to see, and I actually have kind of thrown all hopes of my bracket in the trash after that first round, so we won't talk too much about that because I'll get emotional, but probably too much money bet on that. But I think, the head coach was saying, we got guys from New York and we got guys from New Jersey. Do you think we're scared of anything? And I think that just goes to show what this team is. They come into the tournament with absolutely nothing on their shoulders. They have nothing to lose in every single game they play, and they're playing like it. They're playing not only like they have nothing to lose, but they have everything to lose at the same time, because now you're showing that not only can you win 1 game or 2 games, what are you going to do and how are you going to move forward to win games now that you're here?
I think it's really impressive what they're doing. None of the players on that team were ranked coming out of high school. There's no star recruits all throughout that lineup. So what they're doing is so impressive. They play Purdue next round. They're going to match up not so well. Purdue's got a 7'3" center like they usually do. It's going to be tough for them. Hopefully they can do it. It's really interesting to see how far they've come, and it's going to do the school a great deal. And Holloway should get a ton of money from someone because he's put this team where they should never be, ever.
Everybody loves a Cinderella story. I'm rooting for him. Why not now?
Yeah, Kentucky's basketball budget is over $16 million larger than St. Peter's, as you mentioned. Just a couple blocks of their campus in the New York, New Jersey area. Another thing to look out for in the March Madness bracket is the Big Ten Conference. Michigan, the lone team left. Some early departures from Iowa, Wisconsin, Ohio State. But Michigan, after some controversy towards the end of the season with head coach Juwan Howard, having some big wins into the month of March and now swinging into the Sweet 16.
Well, I'm strongly dislike Michigan. I'm a Notre Dame fan. I hate them, to say the least. But I have to give them a little bit of credit that they've kind of regrouped since Juwan Howard got suspended, and they kind of got back. I don't think they should be in the tournament, but they're in the Sweet 16, so they proved me wrong. I had them going out around 64. They kind of busted every single bracket I made. But yeah, that's about all I have for Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, it was a matter of swinging at head coaches to now swinging into the Sweet 16 for Juwan Howard now and his team. We saw the starting point guard, the senior guard for the Michigan Wolverines, out with concussion protocol in the first round. They were able to win that first round game despite some troubles. I know they were down by at least 15 early going in that game, but they were able to come back. And certainly after an impressive second round win, I think the Michigan Wolverines, and I'll agree with you on this one, I'm not a huge Michigan guy either as a Syracuse fan, but they are dangerous.
I would agree, and I think that the physicality that they showed in both round 1 and round 2 speaks to who they are as a team. They've got a lot of grit, they got a lot of power. I don't think they're done yet. However, they got Villanova on Thursday, so I don't really know. Maybe their chances are coming to a halt. Maybe if you would like that, but we'll see.
Villanova is certainly a team to look out for in the Big East. And sticking with the Big East, Providence College Friars representing the state of Rhode Island. Unfortunate for us Rhodey fans, but still nice to see for the Ocean State.
I think it's great for Ed Cooley because he came from Providence. He spoke at my middle school so long ago, and I've loved him ever since. He came from South Providence. If you don't know much about Rhode Island, that's not the best area. So him growing up in South Providence, being able to coach Providence now and bring them to the Sweet 16, it really shows who he is as a person, and his personality really shows throughout his team. They play with a lot of heart, a lot of grit, and they never quit. And that's what I love about PC right now. They just play for him, and that team was built for March. It's defensively sound, and they make shots when they need to.
Yeah, I mean, as a Rhodey fan, I hate that they're successful. I went to one of the games this year, and it was a scene of any game in the Big East is. But also as a person who's been coming to Rhode Island since a very young age, you know, I do have to give a tip of the cap, as you said, to Cooley and the rest of those guys. I don't think I could have said it any better. They are a team that is built for March. They came in and obviously they had some doubts. There was a lot of talk of a first round upset. Some ESPN analysts, I think Jay Billis had them losing in the first round, but regardless, they're here, they're winning games, and they could be very dangerous as we continue to go deeper into this tournament.
I too had him out in the first round, just strictly to be bitter, because I still don't like it. But I think it's also worth noting that Archie Miller also commented on Cooley and their friendship,
Yes.
and that was something that he was looking forward to now coming to Rhode Island. And I think joining that rivalry will be really fun to watch.
Yeah, it'll be nice to see the rivalry between the University of Rhode Island Rams and Providence College Friars. We haven't really seen that rivalry in the last couple of years. We did get that rivalry this year, but we will see what happens going forward as Rhode Island is going through a little bit of a transition period. Moving over to Duke and Coach K's farewell tour, a very young and unexperienced team, but they have made it this far, and Coach K is pulling together some wins.
Yeah, you know, I'm a huge Syracuse fan. I have a Beat Duke shirt that I thought about wearing to this, actually, as I really do not like Duke, but, you know, the most wins as by a coach in college basketball, Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski, he's fantastic. He knows how to win games in March. We saw Tom Izzo, and we saw now with that matchup against Michigan State, the most combined wins for two coaches in college basketball history. Duke, I think they have, as you said, an unexperienced team. They have really high highs and they have really low lows. So it's a matter of if they can ride that high, and the high also is Coach K's going out. I think that's something they can keep in the back of their mind, is winning for them, especially after that bitter final home game loss to North Carolina, and we saw his reaction in the locker room.
I think it's interesting how young of a team they are. They might be the most talented team in the country, just five-star recruits everywhere. I've been really impressed with how they've played with Coach K, given that it's his last season ever. And kind of going through that, they're not the center of attention, it's all Coach K. We saw it the last home game. It was just, everything was all about Coach K. And I think it's like really surprising to me that they've really stuck together and have been able to do it even though they're really young.
And Duke's been great for so long. They've been in the tournament for so long. It's really going to be interesting to see where they go without Coach K going on from here. It's really going to be an adjustment for them.
Yeah, and to add on to that, Coach K being at the helm of the Duke University Blue Devils for 42 years, and it'll be interesting to see if they can recruit the same with the next coaching staff that they bring in. Obviously, they're one of the better college basketball teams in the country, but will they continue to bring in the 5 stars every single year? Will they continue to be a threat into March Madness? But that is pretty much it for March Madness. Guess we'll wrap it up with our predictions. I'm sure all our brackets are busted at the moment, but what do we got winning it?
Well, I'm probably not going to be very popular with this, but I do think Providence College has a legitimate shot to win this. Al Durham looks really good. The rest of the team looks really good. They're making shots when they need to. I know they haven't played great teams throughout, but South Dakota State put up 82 points a game and they limited them to around 50 points. And in a previous game, they looked really good again. I think they have a legitimate shot to do it. I think it's going to come to them or Texas Tech. Texas Tech was really good against Notre Dame, unfortunately for me. Their defense is solid. I think defense wins championships in March, and those two are the best defensive teams I've seen so far. So I think I picked Arizona to win it first, but since Providence College played so well, I think I have to switch my answer.
I had Baylor going all the way, so my heart's broken. But I mean, now that that's that, I'm going Gonzaga here. I think the Zags are taking this one. They got some anger carrying over from last year. I think they can make something happen.
Yeah, back to this dumpster fire of a bracket that I have. 2 of the 4 of my Final Four teams gone, but I am keeping my fingers crossed that my 2 championship teams, which are still in, so maybe I'm not that bad, but I have a Villanova and Colin Gillespie a date with the Zags, like you said. I think it's going to be Timmy time, and I love Drew Timmy. I love Chet Holmgren. I think the 2 right there, they're fantastic. Obviously, Jalen Suggs and the Zags last year, such a fun team to watch. Couldn't get it done, like you said. I think there's some tough carryover. I think the Zags take it home.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with both those points that you made, Katie, and also Noah. I think they have a chip on their shoulder from last year. They certainly were the team to win it, but Baylor had to stop them in the final. But I do think they will be stopped this year, although I think they have a chip on their shoulder. I think Arizona is the better team or the better number 1 seed. I don't see Kansas getting past Providence College, like you had said, Cam, but I think Arizona is the best number 1 seed, and that's who I have winning this bracket. But that will do it for our show. Thank you so much for tuning into the first edition of Dropping the Anchor. We hope to see you next time.